coming to you live from Raleigh, North Carolina, reminding you of the power of local. When you shop local, you get better goods and services, among many of the powers. And that's one of the things I'm here to talk about today. I'm very lucky to have attorney Erin Edgar. Erin, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Robert. It's my pleasure to be here today.
Well, we've got a lot of COVID-19 quarantine things to ask, but before we get to there, I'd like to introduce Erin. She is an attorney in private practice. Her area of expertise is family law and estate planning, but unlike a lot of attorneys, she has a deep history in the nonprofit area. Erin, can you tell us a little bit about your backstory, please?
Certainly. I have been interested in the legal profession for 30 years, ever since I was in high school, and determined that I was a lawyer and not a musician at heart. I attended UNC Law School, UNC Chapel Hill,
Nice.
and was very disillusioned as I went through law school. I discovered that law was, to a large extent, based on the curriculum I was taking, about fighting your opponent. And I did not want my legal career to be based on a system and philosophy of fighting my opponent when I did not believe in it. My philosophy is work together with others. As I graduated from law school, I had an idea that there were so many problems in my community that could be impacted by me and the gifts that I had. There were problems in my community that needed my attention. How could I solve those? So after a while, I got involved in the area of conflict resolution. I'm still a certified mediator in according to the North Carolina Dispute Resolution Commission. I mediate on a volunteer basis with Carolina Dispute Settlement Services in North Carolina, Wake County Criminal District Court, which sounds kind of odd because my law practice has nothing to do with criminal law. And indeed, it was an area I wanted to steer clear of. But district court is about relationships between individuals, whether they are your neighbors or landlords or whatever. And there are some, small problems that develop. So we work through that. I wanted to find a legal job that also helped me with working through that, quote unquote, helping people work through the situations that they were in to a better future outcome. To that end, I began working with North Carolina, with Legal Aid of North Carolina in 2010, or was it 2011? I don't remember. It was about 10 years ago. I continued to work for them for about 10 years. These situations, when you are working for a nonprofit organization, you are working in a field of very high stress and very low resources. I worked in a situation where I could do a lot of the things I wanted to do. I could have a very holistic relationship with a client, meet them not only on a legal, logical, analytical level, but also on an emotional level, which is something that my heart craves because I'm a very empathetic person, as well as having a lot of legal analysis skills that I, developed over the years.
Well, and you don't typically think of that holistic compassion approach. You don't hear that a lot, and that just from your place of in your heart, which is what, not to interrupt my apologies.
No, that's fine. I tend to preach. So I was very fond of that portion of my job, meeting people on an emotional, compassionate level. But what I was not fond of was, this was not the area of law that I was really interested in. Fundamentally, my interests involved families and how I could protect them as they evolved and grew, and children, how I could give back to the world's future investment. We invest a lot in our children, parents, and the world in general. How could I make their lives better? To that end, I decided a few years ago to start my own law practice that focused on families and children and their future evolution and growth. Sounds a little intellectual, But it ended up that I began this law practice and realized that I could focus on helping parents protect their children's needs, whether they're needs that they have now or needs that they have in the future. And one of the best ways that I felt, then still feel that I could do that, is helping parents plan for times when they may not be able to protect their children,
Right.
whether they are, ill, or whether the inevitable happens and they die, how to protect their children if their children are still growing. It's amazing that almost 50% of Americans, especially younger Americans under the age of 60, do not have a will
Right.
or any kind of plan in place, any kind of directives for others to make their healthcare and financial decisions if they are unable to do that.
Right. I think that's, I hate to use this term, un-American, but as an American, you think I'm in control of my destiny, anything's possible.
Mhm.
Just forget about what happens if I fall or I get hurt or I pass. It's almost this willful neglect, in my opinion, and it's so important and it's so relatively easy to do.
It is very easy to do. And with being American and being in a developed country, being very high functioning in the sense that we all have jobs, we all control where our money goes, we all have a lot of control in our lives. And we tend to forget that there are certain things that we cannot control. And some of us don't forget it. We know about it. We just think, well, I'll do this at a future time. This is
Right.
just too scary to do right now. I am so afraid I can't even think about it. It makes me go into fight or flight mode.
Right.
And so that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help people prepare for that scary time and take on some of that fear energy so they don't have to be afraid. They have someone in their corner working and helping them to put together the best plan possible for them and their
I,
families.
this is the prime example, I believe, where that friend of friend comes in, knowing that Erin is here first to help your family, here first to help you wade through the emotion and the options and the decision to get where you need. And then she's worried about everything else. So, in these very delicate matters, it's very nice to have someone like, and trust. So that's imperative, Erin. And what are some of the planning? So will's only one aspect of it, right? Isn't Yeah.
Yes, a will is only one aspect of this planning. There are other aspects that are equally important to plan for. So not only is a will part of an estate plan, but there are also some things that in legal terms we call advance directives, which basically are letters that you write and sign and witness that say, I want people I know, love, and trust to care for my finances or my health if I am not able to. And by the way, I want people I know, love, and trust to care for my children if I
Right.
become unable to do so. Now, there are provisions in a will that say, I'm going to have this person be a guardian for my children if I'm not able to. But there's a problem because if you are unexpectedly unable to care for children, that guardianship provision does not kick in when you're alive.
Oh.
It's not there. And so if you're alive and you're really sick, you're on a ventilator, you can't speak for yourself, you're unconscious, you're not able to make medical decisions for yourself, you're mentally ill, so severely mentally ill that you can't communicate or make decisions for yourself.
Right. Or unconscious.
Yeah, the children, they may be guarded, but they may go to someone you don't want, like your ugly Aunt Betty. Social services will attempt to place them and do what they can, but like I said, ugly Aunt Betty might take over. And really, you want someone who will protect them financially and will make decisions for the children that are akin to your values and the things that you want for the children.
Right.
and not someone who might not.
Right. Well, as a special dad, being the father of a special needs child, this seems even more hyper important because, a lot of people will say, well, my son's 16. What do I don't
Mm,
worry about it. But
mhm.
sometimes, you know,
Well, I would submit that if your son is 16, you should worry about it because
I agree.
he might not like ugly Aunt Betty, and he may defy her authority at every turn. Whereas perhaps, I would venture to say, if you plan correctly, a 16-year-old, even without special needs, might get along better with a family friend that you've known all your life.
Yeah.
With a special needs child, I would agree that this is also very important. As someone with minor special needs, I went through the system, and as someone who worked in the nonprofit sector with families who either had special needs children or adults with special needs, it's a very delicate balance. And again, special needs, you don't want to have your children with special needs placed with someone who has no idea how to care for those
Right.
needs. So you are correct that it's very important to think about and have someone help you weigh the options. Who is best? And how
Right.
do I get that set up? And that's what an attorney is there for.
Right. Well, Aaron, I can imagine that a lot of us who are quarantined and scared, this is popping up more and more frequently. So it's a great time if you're at home to start this conversation with an attorney. What if we're also a little strapped for cash?
If you are strapped for cash, I can only speak for myself, and I am not here to solicit business, but I am here to say that if you are strapped for cash, I in particular can help you to work through that. So I would submit that if you have this conversation with your spouse or with yourself, if if you're not married and you're the only one who needs to to weigh in on the conversation, and the family decides that it is the best thing for you to do, and if you contact an attorney, and in particular me, I can help you work through a payment arrangement if you're strapped for cash. Um, Myself and many other attorneys will take credit cards, so that's an option. There are also payment plan options available, and it depends on the particular situation. So when most attorneys ask people to determine whether they are good fits for them, they will ask, what's your income? A couple of kind of invasive questions that some people hesitate to answer. There are reasons for asking them. One of them is to kind of get an idea of what plans they will need.
Right.
And another one is to get an idea of how they can help people work through potential money troubles that they may have. The income question, attorneys generally do not ask that to determine how am I going to get paid. They
Right.
ask that to determine how can we work together to make sure that I am compensated for the services that I give because they are valuable
Right.
services.
Absolutely. Well, I would submit, Aaron, that your ability to get the work done is admirable and one of the powers of local, right? You're
Mm.
willing to be flexible if the need exists and needs to be done. So that is admirable, and certainly one of the reasons we have you as a friend of ours. So thanks again. Now, we're about to wrap up. We're out of time. I did want to say thanks again for joining us. Is there anything you would like to add, a call to action, or any little nugget in the remaining minute or two we have?
I have a call to action for everyone today. We are in isolation, and this gives us a lot of downtime. I would encourage everyone, especially if you are a family member, you've got a spouse, to sit down with that spouse and have that conversation about this uncertain time and whether or not you might need to plan for a future that might or might not happen. You may not need to worry too much. You may not become ill. There may not be anything that happens, but we don't know that for certain. So I would encourage everyone to have that difficult conversation and see if, you know, these plans might need to be put in effect. And even if you don't contact me to find out, contact an attorney, preferably in the local area, if you want to go through this process. An attorney can give you so much more help and guidance than something like LegalZoom that just churns out a form. These relationships between you and a local attorney are ways in which you can have someone help you through these feelings of uncertainty or fear that may be cropping up in you. It's not just about generating a form. It's about meeting you and forming a relationship with a trusted professional who will reciprocate that trust.
It is so much more than a form. It is the relationship, and one legal aspect automatically bleeds and affects another. So if you have a family practice attorney, reach out to him or her. If you don't, call Erin and have a conversation with them. What, every year? How often do we need to keep these things fresh and up to date?
It really depends on the situation, the individual situation. I have included in my structure and the way I do business that my fees include a 3-year checkup.
Oh, nice.
So if you have a rapidly evolving situation, you want to make changes, whatever needs to happen, if anything, within 3 years, I come back to you and we go over things again. I would submit that if you're in this situation, you create these documents, you should at least think about it every 3 to 5 years as families are evolving and changing over time. As you create a document, especially a will, you might have people die whom you want to inherit something. If you create a healthcare power of attorney or other advanced directives, something might happen within 3 years, and that person who is serving you may not be willing or able anymore. So that is why it's really important, I would say every 3 to 5 years, to have these checked up on and redone.
Well, that was great. Erin, thank you for sharing your time with us. I know there's plenty more we could cover, but this is not that forum. This is the forum to say, Raleigh, the power of local law is a real thing. It is absolutely imperative, if you have any legal issue, to discover the power of local. If you don't have a will or you need to get your estate put together, please call my friend Erin Edgar. Remember, all that and more is right here in your backyard, Raleigh. Let's wave them off, Erin. Bye-bye, Raleigh.
Bye.